I remember when I got my first prime lens and started shooting everything at like 1.8. All this beautiful background blur. But which aperture settings make people say, wow, that is a beautiful photo? So today, because I love looking at data and doing countdowns, I dug into 5,000 photos to learn which are the most popular aperture settings on the big photo hunt. And perhaps more importantly, I sorted them by average upvotes so we can see which photos our members actually liked more than others. Okay, coming in 5th place with an average... These are so good. Chocolate covered espresso beans. Okay, now coming in 5th place with 10.48 average upvotes per photo, it's the f-stop that we were just talking about, 1.8. And using it is super popular on the big photo hunt, with 35% of the photos that made the top 5 today using that aperture setting. It is that wide open setting that's popular with a lot of new photographers. And I think a lot of people use this because they know they're going to get that beautiful background blur. But it doesn't score well as far as upvotes go. And I have a theory. I'll tell you that theory as we keep going. It all kind of ties together here. I think this lens is a crutch because you don't have to think about creating the story. If you have a background you don't like, you can just blur it out. I love it. I love the look. But clearly here on the big photo hunt, it is not driving the wow factor, the emotional pull that drives upvotes up and makes people say, wow, oh, Ken, I love your photo. Which brings us into 4th place, f2.2. And this is super interesting too because of where it comes from. Let me back up a second. 2.2 is 4th place with 11.13 average upvotes, or 11 average upvotes per photo. So it did a little bit better than 1.8. But unlike 1.8, which aside from scoring so low on upvotes, was the most used aperture in our top 5 here today, the 2.8, it's the exact opposite, coming in 5th place with only 14% of the photos. But here's where this one really gets interesting. 83% of the photos that were shot at f2.2 in this data poll we did were shot on smartphones. And so it's clear that this is like the go-to aperture on smartphones. And it doesn't really do anything special for me. And it clearly doesn't do anything for big photo hunt members who gave it an upvote score of only 11.13%. By the way, if you're watching this video and you're saying to yourself, Ken, what is an upvote? Well, upvotes are how our community picks their favorite photos each week at the Big Photo Hunt, which is arguably the world's most friendly photography community. It's really friendly. Okay, 3rd place, coming in right here, square in the middle. I kind of expected this one, with an average of 15 upvotes per photo. So a little bit better, we're climbing up there. And also the 3rd most popular aperture used at the big photo hunt, with 17% of the photos here in our top 5. It's a pretty safe one. This is f5.6, right there in the middle. And what the data showed here is that a lot of people are using this aperture in cases where they need to jack up their shutter speed. So they get their aperture open wide enough just to get enough light in to crank up their shutter speed and capture that action without blurring everything in the back. And that's why this kind of falls right here in the middle. Okay, coming in 2nd place, we're getting closer to 1st place. And I want to, 1st place is cool. And I want to talk about 1st place, and it ties back into 5th place, which I mentioned earlier in the video. So we'll get there. 2nd place shocked me at first, but then I dug into the data and it all made sense. And this is what's really cool. Coming in with 15.89 average upvotes per photo, which also happened to be the #2 most popular aperture setting, with 20% of the photos in our top 5, which all kind of confused me, but then it clicked. It's 2.8. And here's where this all made sense once I dug into it more. 2.8 happens to be a pretty wide aperture for a lot of zoom lenses, particularly the workhorse 2470, which is super popular. So if you want to get a wide open shot on a 24-70, you shoot at 2.8. So that's what drives up the 2.8 aperture use on the big photo hunt. But I think what explains the upvotes is that people that tend to use these 24 to 70s with a 2.8 probably have a little more experience under their belt. And so maybe their photos on the big photo hunt tend to be a little bit better or have a little bit more emotional pull or storytelling, which is what drives upvotes on the big photo hunt. That is just a theory. I haven't tested it. I don't know, but I think that that may be true. Okay, first place. And first place is really cool. I know I say all of these are really cool, but first place just kind of proves a whole bunch of points at once. I have been digging into big photo hunt data, just trying to learn as much as I can about the community, about our photos, about what makes a great photo and what drives some photos to have super high upvote scores and others not. And there's a whole bunch of factors that go into it. One thing that I have found though, and that we've been able to quantify, is something called wow factor. And that's not new. You may call it something different, storytelling, emotion, whatever it is. But what's neat is that of the top 10% photos on the big photo hunt, all of them have the highest wow factor scores across the board. And when you back it down, wow factor is driven by emotion and storytelling. And then storytelling is then broken down further by composition and lighting and different factors. By the way, a shameless plug, if you want to see all this about your photos, you can go to the Big Photo Hunt and analyze any of your photos, leverage against all of the other photos in the Big Photo Hunt database. And a shameless plug, go check it out though. It's a pretty cool tool. You get a full report, like super full report. So there you go. Wow factor, story, and emotion are what drive upvotes on the big photo hunt, and frankly, drive connection to photographs in the real world. And so it shouldn't shock you, it didn't shock me, that the highest upvoted aperture on the big photo hunt is f8, because it's really good at getting context and story into your photos, because you can see what's going on. It's not just blurring it out. Which goes back to fifth place, 1.8, which is the complete opposite. And that's what I was mentioning before. If you're shooting at 1.8 and blurring the whole background, you're getting very little context and story in those photos, and those photos are not connecting. As far as the number of photos that were shot at f8, that came in fourth place. Only 15% of the photos that were in this top 5 were shot at f8, but the ones that were came in at an average of 17 upvotes per photo. Top of the heap. So should you go out and shoot everything at f8? No, just go out and shoot where you love to shoot. Is it good to practice your storytelling with an aperture that's kind of clamped down a little bit? Yeah, because storytelling is what makes a photo great. Get out there and practice. Take some of that blur away. Blur is great, I love it, but raise your aperture up a little bit and see what you can do. It's super cool, and your upvotes will go up on the big photo hunt. And that's not an opinion, that is absolutely data-driven. More story equals more upvotes. Thank you so much for being here. Last week, I made a video about which prime lens focal lengths drove the highest number of upvotes on the big photo hunt. If you didn't catch it, you can see that here. I'm gonna go eat some more of these chocolate-covered espresso beans. See you next week.